The discovery of the ill-considered actions of the crown prince and his counselors brought about their arrest. But the Council of Castile, to which the matter was submitted, refused to condemn the heir to the throne. The prince was exonerated, and his counselors were exiled. An apparent calm had followed upon these storms. The Prince de la Paix and the Queen, however much a marriage of the crown prince, which would place him under an all-powerful protection, might be distasteful to them, thought it good policy to take advantage of Ferdinand's application to the emperor. It was on this account that they urged the king himself to ask for a wife for his son from the French imperial family. The Prince of the Asturias, without dignity and without courage, had denounced his friends and had expressed his repentance for his fault to the queen and the favorite, humbling himself before them with all the tokens of the most abject submission. Nevertheless, in spite of his cowardice, which should have disgusted the pride of the Spanish character, Ferdinand remained the nation's idol. So intense was the hatred against the Prince de la Paix. This unhappy family, so little worthy of notice, put itself at the mercy of a powerful neighbor who could accord it neither trust nor esteem. It laid bare before his eyes all its turpitudes, its impotence, and an incapacity which rendered its government worthless, and even a source of danger to France. Spain had indeed fallen under the reign of Charles IV to the lowest depths of abasement. Her fleet was nil, reduced to less than 30 seaworthy vessels or frigates, manned by crews short in numbers, whose pay was for the most part 2 years in arrears. The arsenals and the storehouses were empty. The colonies were left to themselves, exhausted, poor, and ready to separate from the metropolis by which they had been deserted. The army numbered about 50,000 men under arms, badly clothed, badly fed, and badly paid. A staff out of proportion to the numbers of the land and sea forces, battened on the feeble war supply. Taxation was badly levied and badly collected. The treasury was in debt. Industry and commerce had practically ceased to exist. Agriculture was neglected, abandoned to old routine, and ruined by the annual migrations of innumerable flocks of sheep, which their proprietors had the privilege to drive from the north of Spain to the south, and which devastated the immense districts on which they were allowed to pasture. The monarchy was governed by an incapable and weak-minded king who abandoned the reins of government to the hands of a vain and unprincipled favorite who was detested by the nation and who was a lover of a dissolute queen. The heir presumptive to the crown was a prince lacking in qualities of heart as well as of intelligence, false, profoundly hypocritical, and the blind enemy of France. Such was the state of Spain, a country on our frontiers whose neighborhood is of such importance to our safety. Her government and her dynasty, crawling at Napoleon's feet when they feared his power or his resentment, had wished to join our enemies in 1807 at the time of the rupture of the negotiations which had been opened between France, Russia, and England. At the time of the declaration of war by Prussia, the Prince de la Paix, thinking that Napoleon would be unable to resist this new coalition, which would increase in size at the first reverse he should suffer, had by a proclamation dated October 3rd, called the Spaniards to arms against an enemy whom he did not name, but who was sufficiently clearly indicated to prevent the possibility of any misunderstanding. The victory of Jena had opened the prince's eyes. He sought on the one hand to disavow his proclamation and on the other hand to try and make it believed that it referred to a threatened invasion of the Moors in Andalusia and a landing of the English. In one word, he did all that he could be done to secure pardon for his imprudent act of bravado. But the emperor's confidence was destroyed forever. Napoleon made up his mind from that day to take his precautions against a perfidious ally who would rise to crush him if ever an opportunity of doing so with impunity should present itself. He demanded that the Spanish government should send an army of 15,000 men to the island of Elba to serve as auxiliaries to the French army and, in the case of necessity, to serve as hostages. The events which had since occurred in Spain had found Napoleon in this state of mind. He did not know what line of action to adopt. Should he ally himself to the Spanish royal house by marriage? Should he seize upon the Spanish provinces on this side of the Ebro? Or should he change the Spanish dynasty? In his heart of hearts, he inclined towards the last alternative. Without having any fixed plan, the emperor sent into southern Spain divisions of French troops assembled under the names of Gironde and Ocean Corps, and divisions of the eastern and western Pyrenees. He placed all these corps under the orders of the Grand Duke of Berg, Murat, and gave him instructions to advance to Burgos and there to await fresh instructions for his subsequent movements. The Spaniards at first received the French troops as friends who had come to deliver them from the odious yoke of Godoy and his creatures. Events crowding on, the Grand Duke of Berg, Murat, had thrown off the mask, and with the corps, which on their entry into Spain had followed the direction of Lisbon and of Gibraltar, marched upon Madrid. The Spaniards reflected that such a number of troops was not necessary to drive out the Prince de la Paix. The capture by surprise of the fortresses of Barcelona, Pamplona, and Saint Sebastian only increased their amazement and their suspicions. Napoleon's silence on his plans, his refusal to publish the Fontainebleau Convention, which related to the division of Portugal, began also to fill the Spanish court, which had retired to Aranjuez with anxiety. Secret preparations for a flight to America were made, the pretext of these preparations being that they were in view of a journey to Andalusia. The populations of Madrid and Aranjuez began to grow excited at what was happening. The court, to reassure the public mind, denied any intention of leaving Spain and published this denial in a proclamation, but all in vain. In the night of March 18th, a revolution broke out in Aranjuez. The maddened mob threw itself upon the house of the Prince de la Paix, broke down the doors of the palace, destroyed the costly furniture in the apartments, and flung the debris out of the windows, hunting for the favorite in every recess for the purpose of murdering him. He, escaping the fury of the mob, came forth from the retreat in which he had been able to hide himself from search. After 36 hours' agony, recognized by a sentinel who denounced him, he was handed over to the bodyguards. Protected by them, he succeeded in reaching their barracks, pursued by a furious crowd and wounded by the blows which he received on his way. The Prince of the Asturias, on the prayer of his distracted parents, consented to intercede in favor of his enemy. He desired the pleasure of enjoying Godoy's humiliation and of casting up his face with perfidious joy, the grace which he accorded to the favorite of his family in return for all the wrong which he had done him. The king and queen, terrified by the disaster which had befallen their well-beloved Godoy, feared for a moment for their own safety. Charles IV declared that he wished to abdicate. By a deed written in haste, he resigned to his son a crown which he had long worn without glory, and the people of Aranjuez went to hail with their acclamations their new king, in the midst of general transports of delight. Napoleon, hearing of these events in Paris, at once sent Monsieur de Tournon off to Madrid. Monsieur de Tournon was one of his chamberlains and orderlies and had recently returned from Spain, where he had been charged with a mission. General Savary, whose skill and devotion were appreciated by the emperor whenever there was anything difficult to be done, was sent off on the morrow with the same destination. Here arises a difficulty which, till now, has remained without solution. As often happens in history, a letter addressed by the emperor by the Grand Duke of Berg, Murat, under the date of Paris, March 29th, 1808, supposed to have been entrusted to Chamberlain Tournon to carry to its destination, has been quoted by numerous writers who have written about the Spanish War and Revolution as though it had reached its destination, although the Grand Duke of Berg, Murat, never received it. This letter was inserted literally into the memorial of St. Helena, but cannot have been communicated by the emperor, who was not in possession of his papers. The dispatch of which I am speaking is in contradiction to all the orders and dispatches which either preceded or followed it. No trace of it has been found either in the archives of the War Office, or of the Foreign Office, or in the private archives of the Louvre. No allusion was made to it in any of the letters which followed it. It may be added that it contains several material irregularities. It is dated from Paris, whereas the emperor was at Saint-Cloud, where he stayed from March 22nd till April 2nd, 1808, the day of his departure for Bayonne, and he always used to date his letters from Saint-Cloud when he happened to be there. The form of address which he used in his letters to Murat was not Sir the Grand Duke of Berg, but my cousin. The emperor did not use the expression, my Minister of Foreign Affairs, an expression which only dates from the Restoration, but used to say my Minister of the Exterior Relations, which was the only application in use at that time. In spite of these slight anomalies, which might have arisen from unavoidable oversights in the numerous transcriptions of this letter, it is a most authentic character and can but have been Napoleon's work. He alone knew how to write on such matters. His style might be imitated, his thoughts might be rendered, but there are details and allusions in this letter which nobody but himself could have known without having been initiated to the ensemble of his vast conception and his most secret thoughts. How did this letter come to be published? What was the affiliation? From whose hands does it proceed? Was the draft taken from the archives of the Louvre in 1814, together with the papers referring to the Duc d'Enghien and the occurrences in Spain in which Prince de Benevento Talleyrand was implicated? And at the same time, when he got possession of all these documents, was this dispatch neglected by him as of no importance to the object he had in view? Or was it saved by chance from the auto de fe to which Talleyrand consigned all the papers brought back from the archives? As was, in so strange a fashion, the first consul's letter relating to the seizure of the Duc d'Enghien. The most probable hypothesis is that this letter to Murat only existed in the form of a draft, that it was only one of the 100 plans in which Napoleon's mind was taken up during the laborious elaboration of this most difficult enterprise. The emperor may have been brought to the ideas which predominate in this letter by the reports which he received from Monsieur de Tournon, who had just traveled through Spain and had pushed on as far as Andalusia. Not that Napoleon would have allowed himself to be influenced by the opinions of this Chamberlain, but because Monsieur de Tournon quoted actual facts which he had witnessed, and because anything that's so candid and truthful an officer might relate could not be listened to otherwise than with great attention. All the suppositions that one may indulge in will not, as a matter of fact, supply the key to this enigma of history. And the emperor's letter to his brother-in-law, Murat, in spite of all investigation, remains surrounded with a mystery, which the author of the Memoirs de St. Helena did nothing to dispel. The clearness, the precision on the terms of this letter, the allusion to the attitude to be observed towards General Solano, amongst others, disposes, in my opinion, of the suggestion of those who have believed that this document was manufactured after the event. Although I have abstained from reproducing in this work historical pieces which are known to the public, I cannot refrain from publishing here, word for word, this most curious letter, so that the reader may have the leading features of the question under his or her eyes. Paris, March 29th, 1808. Sir, the Grand Duke of Berg, I fear lest you be deceiving me on the situation in Spain and lest you be deceiving yourself. Events have been singularly complicated by the affair of March 19th. I remain in a state of great perplexity. Do not imagine that you are attacking a disarmed nation and that you have only to show your troops in order to reduce Spain to submission. The revolution of March 18th shows that the Spaniards have energy. You have to deal with the young people. It has all the courage and will have all the enthusiasm which are to be found in men who have not been worn out by political passions. The aristocracy and the clergy are the masters of Spain. Should they fear for their privileges and for their existence, they will raise levies in mass against us, which may continue the war for all eternity. I have partisans in Spain, but if I present myself there as a conqueror, I shall have no more. The Prince de la Paix is hated because he is accused of having surrendered Spain to France. That is the grievance which served Ferdinand's usurpation. The popular party is the weakest. The Prince of the Asturias has none of the qualities which are indispensable in the head of a nation, but that does not prevent his being set up as a hero to oppose us. I do not wish any violence to be offered to the persons of this family. It is never a good thing to render oneself odious or to inflame hatred. Spain has more than 100,000 men under arms, and that is more than is necessary to carry on a war in the interior with success. Divided over several points, each division may form the nucleus of a general rising of the monarchy. I am placing before you the ensemble of such obstacles as are inevitable. There are others which you will yourself see. England will not let this opportunity of increasing our difficulties escape. Each day she is sending avisos to the forces which she keeps on the coast of Portugal and in the Mediterranean. And she is enlisting Sicilians and Portuguese. The royal family, not having left Spain to go and settle in the Indies, nothing but a revolution can change the state of affairs in this country. It is perhaps the country in Europe which is least prepared for a revolution. Those who see the monstrous vices of this government and the state of anarchy which has replaced legal authority are in the minority. And it is the majority who profit by these vices and this state of anarchy. In the interest of my empire, I can do much good to Spain. What are the best measures to be taken? Shall I go to Madrid? Shall I play the part of Grand Protector and decide between the father and the son? It seems to me difficult to allow Charles IV to reign. His government and his favorite are so unpopular that they could not survive 3 months. Ferdinand is the enemy of France, and that is why he is being made king. To place him on the throne would be to play into the hands of the parties who, for the last 25 years, have desired the annihilation of France. A family alliance would be a feeble tie. Queen Elizabeth and other French princesses perished miserably when it was possible to immolate them as the victims of hideous vengeance. I am of the opinion that nothing must be hurried on, that it will be a good thing to be guided by the events that will follow. The army corps in position on the Portuguese frontiers should be strengthened, and we should wait. I do not approve of your highness's plan of seizing on Madrid with such precipitation. The army should be kept at a distance of 10 leagues from the capital. You had no reason to be assured that the people and the magistracy would acknowledge Ferdinand without opposition. The Prince de la Paix must have partisans in the public offices. The old king, moreover, is attached to him by force of habit, and this attachment may produce results. Your entry into Madrid in frightening the Spanish has served Ferdinand in a powerful manner. I have ordered Savary to go and see what is going on around the old king. He will confer with your imperial highness. I shall decide later on what must be done. In the meanwhile, these are the instructions which I think right to give you. You will not engage me to any interview with Ferdinand unless you deem the position of affairs to be such that I must acknowledge him as King of Spain. You will behave with courtesy and consideration towards the king, the queen, and Prince Godoy. You will insist that the same honors are paid them as formerly, and you will pay them these honors yourself. You will act in such a way that the Spaniards will not be able to suspect what line of action I intend to adopt, and this will be a matter of no difficulty, seeing that I myself am in ignorance on this point. You will give the nobility and the clergy to understand that should France interfere in Spain's affairs, their privileges and immunities will be respected. You will tell them that the emperor desires that the political institutions of Spain should be perfected with the object of harmonizing them with European civilization, and to save the country from the rule of favorites. You will tell the magistrates and townspeople, the people of education, that the political machinery of Spain needs recasting, and that she is in want of laws which shall guarantee her citizens against arbitrary rule and the usurpations of the feudal families, in institutions which shall revive industry, agriculture, and the arts. You will depict to them the state of ease and repose which is enjoyed by France in spite of the wars in which she has been engaged, the splendor of the religion which owes its reestablishment to the Concordat which I signed with the Pope. You will point out to them the advantages which they would derive from a political regeneration, order and peace at home, respect and power abroad. Such should be the spirit of your writings and of your speeches. Do nothing hastily. I can weigh Bayonne. I can cross the Pyrenees, and strengthening myself towards the Portuguese frontier, carry the war in this direction. I will attend to your private interests. Do not you attend to them yourself. Portugal will remain at my disposal. Let no personal plan occupy your attention, nor direct your conduct. That would injure me and injure you still more. You go too fast in your instructions on the 14th. The march which you ordered to General Dupont is too rapid because of what happened on March 19th, and there must be changes made. You will give orders for the new arrangements. You will receive instructions from my Minister of Foreign Affairs. I command that discipline be most rigorously maintained. No pardon for small faults. The inhabitants must be treated with the greatest consideration. The churches and the convents must especially be respected. The army must avoid any encounter either with the Spanish army or with its detachments. Not a percussion cap must be fired on either side. Let Solano get beyond Badajoz. Have him watched. Give in person orders for the marching of the army so that it may always be at a distance of some leagues from the Spanish troops. All would be lost if war were to break out. The destinies of Spain will have to be decided by politics and negotiations. I advise you to avoid any conversation with Solano or other Spanish generals and governors. You will send me 2 couriers each day. Should anything serious happen, send me orderly officers. You will at once send the Chamberlain Tournon, who carries this dispatch, back to me, and you will hand him a detailed report. And hereupon, I pray God, etc., signed Napoleon. In the meanwhile, the old sovereigns who had remained at Aranjuez, who were the prey of mortal terrors, hearing that the Grand Duke of Berg Murat was approaching Madrid, they secretly sent their daughter, the Queen of Etruria, to implore him to protect them.